with my 25-year-old high-functioning autistic child, and we're discussing his experience with Two6 Resources from a parental perspective. We were trying to look at the next step. Rob was getting ready to get out of high school. He was getting ready to kind of start his own life. And at the time for special needs kids, especially at the time that Rob was doing this, and we're going back 7, 8 years, there wasn't a plethora of services available. So we were trying to kind of find anything that we could to get him some services, but really to find out what that next step was. College wasn't really an option. At least not the atypical college scenario. So really the next step was getting him prepared for independent living. And what did that look like? What did that feel like? Because as parents, we didn't really have a good sense of what that was going to look like. So we got hooked up with vocational rehab and worked with them for a little while, and they're actually the ones that gave us the referral to Two6. Based kind of on our concerns of what was the next step for Rob, and it seemed like the good next step was to see what training was available and what was out in the community to kind of help him take that next step for independent living, whatever that looked like. Our biggest concern for Rob, and even to this day, is setting him up to be successful in independent living outside of our span of control. So that's getting a job, that's paying his bills, that's being able to cook, that's being able to do the life skills necessary for him to live an independent life. And when you raise a autistic child, or a child with special needs, probably of any sort, my experience is with the autistic child, but when you raise an autistic child from a parental perspective, there's a lot of fear. There's a tremendous amount of fear as you kind of look to their future. How does that look? Where do they get their self-esteem? How does that workplace environment work? And when you're raising them at 18, 19, it dawns on you, here's the breaking point. Where do they take the next step? Kind of our story with Two6 goes back once again to the introduction by vocational rehab to the services that Two6 offered. The first thing that they did was they did an evaluation with Rob. Kind of did a little OTJ. They watched him at a job that he had, and they did a skills assessment, and they kind of worked with Rob to find out kind of strengths and weaknesses, where would be a good fit, what wasn't a good fit. So we went through the entire evaluation process. And then kind of based on that evaluation process, then they moved us into the kind of the next phase, which was the job placement phase, which really was the most impressive aspect of our interaction with Two6. And with Two6, I've got to tell you, the experience was awesome, because we did the evaluation. It was a very positive evaluation. Of course, I'm probably biased because he's my son, and I think that he's a great kid and he has very good skill sets. But still, you're talking about working out in a neurotypical environment. So getting him kind of the evaluation, the input, the feedback to be successful in an interview was crucial. And Two6 was able to kind of walk him through that phase. And really, within a very short period of time, he had 2 interviews. 2 opportunities, did the interview with his current employer. They accepted him, and he's been there for 2 years and had some tremendous success. Well, when you go through the evaluation process, one of the things that you do come out with is a sense of what the strengths and weaknesses are. You don't want to set your child up to go into an environment where they're going to fail. When you're working, and this is every child, but especially a special needs child, the self-esteem gets to be a big piece of this. Because a lot of the reinforcers that we naturally get as neurotypical people out in the environment, they don't necessarily filter. So they have to be set up for success as much as they possibly can. So knowing what the strengths and weaknesses, knowing what motivates them. Motivation is everything. What motivates them in the in life in general, what motivates them in the marketplace, what motivates them on the job. That is crucial to knowing what's going to be a successful job. Because in my mind, knowing that if you put a child in a job where there's not the appropriate reinforcers or the appropriate motivation, they're going to fail. And they're going to fail because we didn't do our job as parents in conjunction with Two6, and we didn't do our job in the evaluation process to set them up for success. So when they finished the evaluation, clearly some of his strengths were routine. Rob works very good in a highly structured routine environment. Organization, having things in their place, those type of motivations, because those are things in his environment that make him feel comfortable. So when the counselor looks at what's a good place to interview, the job that he has as a stalker clearly fit that bill. So you immediately got a situation where the evaluation showed the counselor what are things in his life that he needs to feel comfortable, matched it with a job, so that there's a natural sense that this is probably a good match. This is going to be successful because the same things he requires on his personal side, order, structure, routine, they can offer on the job side because of the routine nature of the job, the order of putting things away, the skills that he'd be using on the job to be successful. I'd rate Two6 very highly. We had experience with other services that didn't seem to take the same initiative or care and didn't really seem as interested in walking Rob entirely through the process. That, albeit well-meaning, were not effective, essentially. I can't tell you how important it is from a parental perspective when you're working with your child and trying to get them into the workplace, because there's more than just money, there's more than just a job, there's the whole sense of self-esteem. When I keep bringing up the self-esteem, but when Rob talks to people and tells them what they do, they're all very thankful. They all say, "Hey, great job, Rob." So that makes him feel good. But in addition, he starts feeling good about who he is. So in other environments, like strictly recreational, he now has the confidence to go out and be himself in other environments that haven't been structured for him. And that's the transition skill that, as a parent, you dream for, because that gives him the skill set and the self-confidence and the self-esteem to take what he's doing at the work site and move it over to social environments, so that he can have neurotypical friends, atypical friends, or work in friend settings and not feel bad because he doesn't relate to the world the way they do, or that he has a disability, but he can embrace his disability and just walk up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Rob, and I have high-functioning autism," and they embrace him because he is open about it. He's not worried about his disability, he actually embraces it. But that comes from feeling good, and that coming from feeling good has to do a lot with being able to participate in a neurotypical world, in a job. And every day we're amazed at what he's willing to take on. We're always amazed at the next challenge. I think Tara and I's jaw dropped about 2 years ago. He started working for Target. I probably can't say it. He'd started his first job. He learned how to use the bus system. We got him a bus pass, so he was now utilizing some outside transportation to take care of his needs. He wasn't dependent on our car. And he just came back one day and said, "I'm going to go to the Florida Mall and do my Christmas shopping." And we were like, wow, okay. But he had the confidence because he was just transitioning the skills of the bus, which he learned because of the job, and he was applying that to his life. And to me, that's tremendous, higher level thinking. That's tremendous motivation on his part to actively participate in becoming independent and having his own life. And that's amazing. I think the future challenges are really no different than the past challenges. We keep trying to take the next step for independence, independent living. As much as we can give Rob the skills and as Rob can take on the skills. Because that level of learning never ends. That level of development never stops. Heck, it didn't even stop for me. I'm still trying to balance a checkbook. But, you know, that becoming independent and learning those skill sets, that doesn't stop just because he got his first job. The challenges and the fear, at some point, Mom and I are no longer going to be in the picture. And have we done a good enough job in conjunction with the community services available to set Rob up for success for when we're not here? And that's probably the biggest concern. So to walk him through the eval and get him some job interviews and get him successfully placed was tremendous. Because that's not something we would have been able to do on his behalf. We can love him, we can teach him, you know, we can support him, but we can't necessarily do the other things in the community to help him take that next step. And that's really where Two6 stepped in and helped us transition him to the next level in his life.